All right, all, we're back again to talk about the Space Marine balance data slate because ultimately it's the biggest and most significant update to the overall balance data slate. So it seemed appropriate that we segmented it here as its own thing. I've read it already. Phil hasn't. So you're going to get an authentic reaction from him as I guess I'll explain it to him, I suppose. That might be fun.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is and you're, act impressed. Or underwhelmed, potentially. Who knows?
Likely.
Now, Phil, I will say from the outset, as you already know, Predator Annihilators reroll their damage when targeting vehicles and monsters, and combat knives have been given a pip, as people like to say now, a pip of AP. 1 AP from the combat knives, which are wielded by various things, which we'll talk about in the moment. But bar that, and a couple of changes to characters and things in Dark Angels and etc., etc. You don't know any of this Space Marine stuff, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right. Well, let us begin, Phil. So, Oath of Moment, right? You know Oath of Moment is re-rolling hit rolls. Well, Phil, it is re-rolling hit rolls. But if you are not a Black Templar, a Blood Angel, a Dark Angel, a Death Watch, or a Space Wolf, you also get +1 to wound.
Nonsense.
How do you feel about that?
I would rather it be re-roll the wound roll. Or,
you would rather have re-roll wound rolls than +1 to wound?
Because I think +1 to wound stronger. I think that's really strong. I mean, obviously it's very context dependent in terms of what you're up against, what your strength is. But inherently, even going from 3s to 2s, unless you're going from 6 to a 5, I would say, and also probably the number of shots is very important as well. But yeah, +1 to wound, I would say, is always inherently stronger than reroll wound rolls, or especially if it's reroll wound rolls of a 1. For example, and that feels more in line with your obviously you're re-rolling all your hit rolls, but a re-roll and a re-roll, or because that's what it was before as well, feels more in line with itself than a re-roll plus a +1 to wound. So that just seems a bit out of left field. I mean that's very strong. Obviously, it's only against 1 unit, so it's not too bad. But yeah, that thing's going to be dead, basically, isn't it?
Well, essentially, yeah. And I mean, obviously, they've not given it to Black Templars, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, Death Watch, given the fact that they have other kind of perks and abilities that complement Oaths of Moment. So kind of makes sense because they do have other things. But it has definitely really increased the viability of those kind of mainstay Space Marine detachments and chapters, etc.
Yeah, so that's good because they do need something to make them stand out, especially when those successor chapters can still combo and use a lot of the abilities from the sort of standard Marine Codex.
Indeed. Next on the list of changes is the Fire Discipline Enhancement from the Gladius Task Force, the bestest of the detachments, so says many people. If you are in the Devastator Doctrine, Fire Discipline Enhancement is while this bearer is leading a unit, ranged weapons equipped by models in that unit have sustained hit 1. In addition, while you're in the Devastator Doctrine, you can re-roll advance rolls made for that unit. So not a massive change, but helpful in many instances.
I mean, I guess.
Do you remember what Devastator Doctrine does?
No.
That allows you to advance and fire.
Okay.
Weapons.
So if everything... Because I was going to say it requires you to have lots of assault weapons, but if the Devastator Doctrine allows you to do that, then then that's kind of all right. Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. You've got change to the Captain in Gravis Armor's ranged weapon. So it's a mastercrafted heavy bolt rifle. It's now damage-free, Phil.
That's very good.
It's significant, and we are jumping around here. It's significant because the regular heavy intercessor now has a
2 damage.
damage 2 bolt rifle.
Tasty. That's
which isn't
good.
bad. And their heavy bolter is now hitting on 3s rather than 4s.
But then if you stand still, you're hitting on 2s.
You are, yes. Yeah.
Although that don't hit on 2s.
Well, they do if they stand still, because they've all got the heavy keyword.
Oh, okay.
I mean, even regular intercessors have the heavy keyword.
Yeah,
this has been an option for Space Marines for time.
No fair, but they are mucking around with the historic precedents of heavy weapons are always more unwieldy than regular weapons. So they've just gone, nah, we get rid of that.
That's fair. But yeah, heavy intercessors are basically now a little bit more viable. People are broadly excited about them because, having damage 2 makes them a bit more impressive. And obviously they are very durable.
Yeah, it does make me wish I could go back to having Stalker bolt rifles with 2 damage. Yeah, they were fun.
Yeah, they were fun. The old Stalker bolt rifle was good times, but you're not allowed that anymore. But you can take heavy bolt rifles, and they are damage 2, which is
I mean that feels like it makes sense. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah. There is a sweeping change to chapter masters, specifically Pedro Cantor, Korosoro Khan, Shrike, and strangely Lysander, who isn't actually a chapter master. He's still, but regardless of his regal status, they have changed that, and Ferios as well. Iron Father Ferios of the Iron Hands. Mm-hmm. Basically, what they've done is they've taken all of the units that feel, what's the best way of saying it, most affiliated with that character and that style of play. So for Lysander, he is a man in Terminator armor wielding a Thunder Hammer and a Storm Shield. So Assault Terminators are buffed. And the way they buff is that their objective control score is improved. So in the case of Lysander, he makes Terminator Assault Squads and Terminator Squads control 2 rather than 1. So that's quite good.
Yes. However, I'm looking at Korosoro Khan, who, correct me if I'm wrong, is on foot.
Yes, correct, yeah.
But he buffs Outrider Squads, which not on foot, and changes their objective control score to 3.
Yes.
But he's on foot.
Yeah, but Phil, he doesn't need to be in the squad. It's all Outrider squads in your army.
Oh, sorry, it's not. He's not got to be attached to that.
He hasn't got to be attached. No, just by having him in the army, you then gain these benefits.
Okay, that's good. Okay, right, now I'm sold, because I was like, if he's got to hang out with them on foot, and he's like, no, that would be mad. Okay, all right.
It does have to be said again, though. They really need to put that guy on a bike. It is crazy that he's not on one, really, isn't it?
Well, I think they should be a version on bike for White Scars for sure. Yeah, it doesn't have to be him. Give me someone else. There's plenty of captains to go around.
Yeah, or they could give us a generic cap. They really need to do a Captain Outrider bike model thingy. It is necessary. Okay. But again, an 11th edition concern. So yeah, Khan makes the Outriders OC free, objective control free. Shrike looks after assault intercessors with jump packs. They go up to OC2. Cantor looks after or works well with Stern Guard. And they go up to OC2. And then Iron Father Ferios works with the Heavy Intercessor Squad, making them OC3.
Okay. Cool.
So, yeah, pretty nice change across the board.
Yeah.
And then Vulcan Heston. There is one last one. Vulcan Heston, by the way, was an interesting pick because I was surprised that they went Vulcan and not Agrax Agatone, because I would have thought...
Right.
I would have thought that would have been, given the fact that he is the new Primaris character. In the case of Lysander as well, I was surprised they went Lysander instead of Punchy Geezer. What's the Punchy Geezer called? I can't remember his name even.
McPhisto. But yes, I know
McPhisto.
you mean.
Yeah. I can't remember, mate. Honestly can't remember. But anyway, Volkan Heston makes the Infernus squads Control Squad 2 or OC 2. So yeah, all pretty good there. So yeah, basically a nice extra benefit for those armies. Interestingly, though, no Ultramarine representation here. You can't take Marnie as Calgar and make Blade Guard, OC, whatever.
True. Roberti Gilliman does get an ability as well, so maybe that's his.
He does,
thing.
and yeah. But again, I think the thing
it's a different ability.
Yeah, truth be told, though, is I think the Ultramarines. We'll get into this in a moment, but the
They're
Ultramarines
already good.
They're already good. They're now probably the best type of Space Marine army.
Ooh.
Maybe they might be the best Space Marines at the moment with some of these changes, but we'll get into some of that. But yeah, there you go. So basically, add that character in, buff, lovely.
Nice.
So we've done the heavy intercessor changes, pretty cool. The Infernus squad, their AP has gone up to 1. It used to be AP dash. Bearing in mind they have ignores cover and torrent, so getting the AP 1's pretty cool. So that's pretty good.
Impulsor transport we talked about earlier, going to 7.
Yes, that's the Repulsor Executioner, not the Impulsor. Repulsor Executioner.
Oh, wait, no, sorry. It has Impulsor here going to 7, but that was an old update.
Yeah, that's an old one. So you're quoting
my
the
mistake.
old ones.
I am, yeah.
My goodness. Inceptor Squad now, when arriving from Deep Strike, goes to 6 rather than 3.
Mm-hmm.
The Infernus Squad now subtracts 1 from the Battleshock test that it causes when it burns people.
That's cool. And like I said earlier, should sort of happen pretty much by default. I sort of feel like everybody's leadership needs to just go up by 1 to be worse, basically. That's what they need to do.
I'm not sure that's entirely true, but I think more abilities should probably have a bit more of a scary factor to them, such as being, burned with lots and lots of flamers. Yeah. Which they have done here, which is a good change.
I mean, in addition to the extra AP, that makes them pretty good, it seems.
No, I've liked the Infernus squad for a while. I think it's got some viability. I think, again, the idea that you could utilize like an Impulsor or a Repulsor or whatever, maybe a Repulsor, and, maneuver these guys out, get them deployed sort of deep into no man's land and effectively have them as a effective deterrent, because obviously their Overwatch ability potential is very meaningful, especially when if you're looking at it through the perspective of maybe running it with Ultramarines, you could take Tigerius, Chief Librarian Geezer, and he allows you to Overwatch for free. So,
that's cool. I was going to say, because I remember they took, and we haven't looked at the Deathwatch index yet, but Deathwatch had an ability to deep strike redeploy your units around.
Yes.
I'm assuming they don't have either access to Infernus, or if they are, it's like a mixed squad, so you're not maximising your shooting capability. Because that could be quite interesting, a teleporting squad of Infernus Marines.
Oh, totally, yeah. No, Deathwatch We'll check it when we get to the index side of things. But I would assert that, like any army, they could still have an Infernus in their army. I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to. Because, Dark Angels can get them, Blood Angels can get them, so I don't see why Deathwatch wouldn't be able to get them. But we'll check that later. So that's a nice change to them. So Intercessors... Because obviously not enough people take intercessors anymore, Phil, except for you. You like an intercessor.
Well, my army's mostly made of them, and I haven't got around to making any more models.
Well, that's what it is, you see. You made yours as an 8th edition army, and then they came along and went, no more of that, move on.
Yeah.
But they've added a new ability to the intercessor squad. I'll give you a shiny penny, Phil, if you can tell me what the current ability is for intercessors.
I thought it was sticky objectives.
Yeah, shiny penny to you. I'll get you one of those Cadbury's gold coins,
Oh, brilliant, thank you.
They brought those back apparently for this Christmas. I haven't seen them anywhere, but apparently they do exist. So yeah, now you've got target elimination, Phil.
In addition to, it's not replacing.
In addition, so you got sticky objectives and target elimination. Each time this unit is selected to shoot, it can use this ability. If it does, until the end of the phase, add 2 to the attacks characteristics of bolt rifles equipped by models in this unit, and you can only select one enemy unit as the target of all the unit's attacks. Now, I'll remind you, Phil, that a bolt rifle is rapid fire, right? It's rapid fire 1.
Yeah.
So when you are in short range rapid fire range, you are now getting a mighty 5 shots a man.
Because it'd be
the 2 they normally get, plus the 2 they're getting with this ability, plus the 1 they're getting from rapid fire.
Right. Oh, so it was 2 base before, and now it's add 2. Oh, yeah.
So now they're 5 shots a man.
Yeah, or you could split fire and lose 2 shots.
You can't.
Like,
oh yeah.
No. I mean, you either, because it says you can use this ability. It's like, yes, I will always use this ability because it is darn good. I'd almost rather they say, like, if you didn't move or something, you get this, because then it's almost like the old school.
Well, if you don't move, Phil, you hit on 2s because you're heavy.
Oh, yeah, true.
And your assault, you can advance and shoot this.
5 shots each.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are. Wow. I thought the Custodes updates were good, but these are.
It's almost like they've recently done a show on Amazon and put out a game a couple months ago. And
those people don't care how good or bad Space Marines are.
I think they're going to care now. I mean, here's the thing. Yeah. They're still only 1 damage. They're AP 1. But now all of a sudden it's like, if you're unfortunate enough to be fielding something like Termagaunts or other 1 wound units exist, Drakari, Kabalite warriors, or Elder Guardians, maybe. I don't know. The point is if you've got a 1 wound unit, a unit of 5 intercessors is going to shoot you 25 times. It's like what the hell, man?
Well, I'm pretty sure 2 Marines now have the potential to kill 6 Marines from shooting. Because they can each do, was it 5? 5 damage.
Well, potentially 5 damage.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. Obviously, that's not guaranteed, obviously because of saves, but they have the potential to do that, which is pretty bonkers. Yeah.
And obviously, don't forget, Phil, I mean, obviously, if it's your own for a moment, you're re-rolling your hits and +1 to wound.
+1 to wound. Yeah.
It's pretty wild. So literally, if you were an intercessor squad firing at a unit of Guardians, those Guardians are so dead, it's ridiculous.
Now, I was going to say, I assume
or even if it's a unit of Banshees or Striking Scorpions, they're pretty dead.
Yeah, because this affects the characteristic of bolt rifles, and I assume the grenade launchers has a different profile, so it doesn't affect.
But it's still extra shots in there. You still got your extra 1 grenade, just a good measure.
No, exactly, or 2 if you've got a 10-man squad.
If you've got a 10-man squad, absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really good.
I still think I'd still be going 5-man squads, because now all of a sudden my 5-man squads have got the output of the old 10-man squads.
Yeah.
Admittedly, not quite,
but close enough.
Close enough. They're off by 5.
I mean, who's scribbling? Yeah.
So there you go. Pretty mad, isn't it?
Yeah,
pretty mad. Plus, you can still obviously arm the sergeant up with a, melee weapon, and have yourself a thunder hammer or something. It's a pretty amazing unit, the intercessor. But people do still dismiss them as being rubbish because they are the vanilla thing, but whatever. But if intercessors being good is not your bag, you don't think it's what they're cut out to be. Obviously, Phil, earlier when we were talking about the other stuff, we talked about Dark Angels, we talked about Outrider squads.
Yeah,
and Outrider squads got like a bunch of stuff now, or rather, they got a bunch of potential stuff within the confines of the Raven Wing. Well, in addition to that, Phil, Outriders also now have a special rule that replaces turbo boosting. So before they used to turbo boost.
Right.
Now they have thunderous impact. So each time a model in this unit makes a melee attack, If that unit made a charge move this turn, improve the strength and the damage characteristic by 1. So you're now strength 5, damage 2 with your basic chainy swords. And your chaplain that comes along for the ride, I think will now strength 7, damage 3.
What? So he also gets that, or because he joins the unit?
Squad? I don't know. Maybe not. But whatever. Let's say he does, and if we're wrong, we're wrong.
No, that probably sounds about right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then if it's your own for the moment, Phil, you get to re-roll the hits and re-roll the wounds.
Right.
No,
yeah. Plus one. Yeah. So it should be re-roll because that's what everyone thinks. Yeah. Okay. No, it's good. I'd sort of like the old one where it's just an extra move. But I sort of feel like probably with the state of the game in terms of the smaller table sizes, they've gone, people don't really need that.
Yeah, the Mike moves 14, you add 6 to it, it sort of becomes entirely redundant.
It's a bit of a moot point, unless you've got some advanced and charge abilities, then it becomes a bit nonsensical. I mean, this is pretty
like if you're a Raven Wing detachment, for example.
Yes. Yes. Okay, no, that seems all right, yeah.
Yeah, fair. Underwhelmed you are by the...
No, it feels good. It feels probably better than before, but it's replaced it with a sort of thematic ability that was very movement-based and with something that's just pure damage output.
Yeah. But if I was being charged by, a Space Marine on a motorcycle, though, I imagine it would hurt.
Yeah... In a way, it's like I'd almost rather just do like mortal wound damage rather than because the name Thunderous Impact kind of implies that it's like the bike charging in and it's just going to do some damage on the charge, rather than suddenly making your chainsaw even better because it's just moving that little bit faster. But I mean, whatever, it's fine. It's my disassociation between the naming convention and what the rule ends up being more so than me having a problem with the rule itself.
Well, fair. Well then, Phil, maybe you'll be more impressed with Reaver squads. So Reaver squads now have Fearsome Assault ability, which is basically make people take battle shock tests, but now you subtract 1 from those tests. So good. Thumbs up.
One thumbs up.
Also, they've got Terror Troops, Phil. So while an enemy unit, excluding monsters and vehicles, is within 3 of 1 or more units with this ability, subtract 1 from their objective control characteristic in that enemy unit. So from models in their objective control. So literally, you could make their OC 0. It's not 1 to a minimum of 1. It's just subtract 1.
But the other ability can battle shock them and already make them OC 0, but admittedly, this one works longer because the battle shock ability works then and there and will be relevant for your turn. But then, as we've said many a time, battle shock will just reset in their command phase and they'll be back to normal in their turn. Whereas this ability switches that off for their turn as well. Yeah.
The benefit of the battle shock thing, though, is that it means
stops stratagems and stuff.
Yeah, if you do multiple charges, it means they can't be interrupted on, for example, which is useful. So if they charge and something else charges and they fail the battle shock test, then you go, cool, I'll start with this one over here because I know you can't interrupt here. It just sort of helps that flow. And also, you don't even need to engage, right? So if you've got the bolt carbines, you come down, do a bunch of shooting, you go within 3, because going within 3 is not being in combat, and just chill out within 3. And your opponent.
True. Yeah, you can just steal the objective off them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, personally, I just think if you fix battle shock to be, once they're battle shocked, they've got to pass the test in the following turn. And not it just reset, then it kind of does all of this all together, with the exception that now, as you say, you can be within 3 and not in combat. Okay, yeah, so it's not bad. It's not bad. For how the rules of Battleshock work, this is good.
Indeed.
Interesting.
The Repulsor Executioner has a transport capacity of 7. We know that already. The next, probably infinitely more interesting upgrade is to Robert Girly Man, or Bobby G, as he's more passionately referred to. So we have Author of the Codex. At the start of your command phase, select 2 Author of the Codex abilities. Until the start of your next command phase, this model has those abilities.
So instead of picking 1, he gets picked 2.
Correct, yes. So he has the one where you can pick 2 oaths. So you can pick 2 targets for Oath of Moment, which is basically the default one. It has an aura, which discounts stratagem costs. So that's pretty solid on the whole. Mm-hmm. And then he has another one that I can't even remember because, so rare is it that
you would never pick that one.
No, I think that's the case. I'm going to just look it up now, just to because I've been running Bobby G and a bunch of army lists because I've always thought he was pretty cool.
Right.
So while friendly Adeptus Society units are in 6 of this model, add 1 to the objective control characteristic of models in that unit, and you can reroll Battle Shock leadership test taken for that unit. Master of Battle is the Oath of Moment one, and Supreme Strategist is once per turn 1 unit from your army that can use a friendly Adeptus Society unit within 12 of the model and the target the stratagem. If it does, reduce the CP. Yeah, so he basically can pick a unit within 12 of him and go, cool, that costs you 1 less. So it's like mobile.
Okay.
Captain,
all right. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically you pick 2 of those. So that's pretty good now. Pretty good.
Not bad.
Stern Guard veteran squads. Now, each time the model in this unit makes an attack targeting the Oath of Moment, you can re-roll the wound rolls, Phil. So it used to be you re-rolled wound rolls of 1.
Right.
Now you re-roll wound rolls.
And you get +1 to wound as well.
Correct, yeah. Yeah. Pretty wild.
It's good. It's good. Yeah.
You think that's good?
Yeah, so it's a lot of stuff they're getting. A lot of stuff Space Marines are getting. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, don't forget as well, like Terminator squads already get +1 to hit the Oath of Moment.
Oh, God, yeah. Okay.
So now they get +1 to hit it, and they get +1 to wound it, and they get to re-roll the hit roll.
But Stern Guard not particularly good at the moment. Do they need this?
They have been good, but they've not been very well represented. So I think changing it to re-roll the wound rolls was probably a good move for them.
Okay. Yeah,
I will say this much, though.
Don't they have the anti-keyword plus devastating wounds?
That's correct, yes.
So you're just going to...
on their combi weapons.
So you're just going to fish for your 4+s with your
100%,
re-rolling... Yes. See, I don't like that. Then becomes too busted, in my opinion, if that's happening.
They don't get that many shots, though. It's only 1 shot with a combi weapon, and it hits on 4s.
Okay.
Which is bold, right? Like, I actually genuinely was flabbergasted by the fact that Stern Guard with combi weapons hit on 4s.
Why do they hit on 4s, though? Because...
the implication being that they're harder to hit with, I guess, or whatever. But,
because combi weapons are a bit difficult to shoot with, although Stern Guard are the elite shooter unit.
I know, it is weird. It is very weird.
Feels odd. It's like saying Vanguard veterans, the ultimate, or not the ultimate, but let's say, for the sake of argument, one of the most elite combat units, but they just hit on 4s because all their weapons are dead heavy. It's a similar sort of nonsense argument.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. And it's wild, right? Because, like, we've had this conversation a bunch of times, the 40k rules designer's relationship with the 4+ roll. It's very rare that stuff hits on 4+, so it is sort of odd that you would have any gun wielded by the elite shooting unit of Space Marines that is worse at hitting than other things. It just, it is very odd.
Yeah,
it's
see, I don't mind it for things like heavy weapons when you're moving them, for example. That feels like it sort of makes sense. But for a weapon that, yes, it's a combi weapon, but it doesn't look any more difficult to wield than a bolter. It's a bit odd.
Yeah, very odd. I mean, back in the day, it used to be that if you were firing both weapons simultaneously.
Right, it was. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I guess and now it's just one profile, so it's representing that you always shoot both at the same time.
Correct.
So, okay. that sort of works. Again, it's sort of like a bit lost in translation. It's like it used to do this thing, and that thing made sense as to why it was harder to shoot, because you had the choice to shoot just a bolter or both together. Whereas now they've combined it. You don't know why it hits worse. Unless you know literally the historical rules. Well,
again, that's sort of like what I was saying earlier when I was ranting about Genius of the Occult, which is the idea that, you know, there are lots of instances where they don't think about things in the context of this game today. They think about the historical precedent and apply ideas based on what has been rather than what needs to be. And I do think that's one of the weird things about 40K is sometimes it does struggle under the weight of its own history, but whatever.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, okay.
Last of the changes, various combat blades and knives. So change the armor penetration characteristic of the following profiles to -1. Combat knife for Captain in Phobos armor, Lieutenant in Reaver armor, Reaver squad, and Scout squad. So that's a pretty significant change, as if Scouts weren't already good enough. Then you also have paired combat blades on Incursor squad, Lieutenant in Phobos armor, and Lieutenant with combi weapon. So a number of improvements to the combat knife profiles of a number of different units. Not intercessors, though. Couldn't see themselves around to giving them yet another buff. I think they just have close combat weapons rather than combat knives.
Yeah, the combat knife, I think, is a specific profile to those sort of like Phobos-y type units.
The ones that have very big knives.
But what I sort of don't like about that is you're sort of saying the armor penetration characteristic of a knife, admittedly wielded by a super soldier, is as strong and as good as a chainsword. And it's like, that just feels off to me. But I think logically they probably do need a buff in some way, because literally no one ever takes Reavers. So yeah,
they might do now.
Well, do now. They've got some,
but they have increased their points, to be fair. So
probably not.
Yeah, only by 1 point though, so I don't really think it's going to massively make a difference.
Fair.
They have weirdly increased the points of heavy intercessors relatively significantly, though. They went from like 95 to 110, so that's a weird one. It feels very much like there's a lot of things where they've given buffs, but then they've changed the points. So like both Gilliman and the Lion have had significance points increases, which again makes sense because their profiles have sort of been changed accordingly.
But then why make the changes at all? Because you're almost implying that currently that unit is balanced, and because otherwise you would give them a buff and not change their points. Unless, of course, the points are only marginally offsetting the buff that they're giving, but not fully offsetting. So you could say the rules change we have made to, say, Gilliman, or especially the Lion, because his profile change was pretty substantial, I thought. You could say let's, for the sake of argument, say it's a 50 points upgrade that he's got in terms of worth of stuff, but actually we're only increasing his points by 20, so it is still a buff overall. But who knows their reasoning?
Again, it's the problem, isn't it, though? It's always the way with GW where they overcorrect everything. It's always like, oh, we want to solve or we want to do like something, but it's very. But again, the points changes with the way that 40K works anyway. They're so minor. It's like, okay, cool. I mean, obviously, you probably weren't taking heavy intercessors before. Now you might. And if you do, that's what they now cost. So in some respects, what they were before is irrelevant because you'd never thought about taking them anyway.
Yeah, what might this be is, rather than it being an external balance in terms of making the codex overall better, what it is doing is finally some internal balance within the codex to make units that weren't popular more viable. So the things like Inceptors just feels like a generic nerf because that's happening to everything in terms of their deep striking within 3 is now 6 inches. But things like Reavers getting some extra abilities and plus their combat knives getting better, that's clearly a thing that probably won't make Space Marines win more games, but will maybe make you pick Reavers more when you're composing your army, because they're finally like, oh, this has playability, whereas before it might not have seemed like it has. So that would probably explain why they've changed so much. However, things like the Oaths of Moment, because that is much more army-wide, feels like that's more of a sort of external balance rather than an internal one. Although, to an extent, it sounded like their justification for it was balancing it out within relation to the other Space Marine supplements. So, yeah, it's interesting. It'll be good to see how they do in sort of tournaments and events over the next few months. It definitely sort of makes me feel a bit more excited to, dust out my Marines and play some games. The Intercessors are pretty good. The Inceptors have technically gotten worse, but that doesn't bother me too much in terms of how they used to play. It's got some interesting stuff. It makes me want to build my Infernus Marines, actually, because they seem pretty damn good now as well.
Yeah, no, really are, mate. I think, there's a lot of meaningful changes to a lot of squads that probably haven't seen the sort of play that GW was hoping for. I think Infernus being the new squad, although admittedly only a push fit kit that obviously came in Leviathan and has since been released separately, and Sternguard obviously having their Leviathan set but then having new minis. They've not been hugely successful. I mean, they've probably been purchased plenty, but they're not very well represented in terms of their rules on the tabletop. So seeing those getting buffs makes sense. And also, potentially there is a chance that people will now be looking at the broad spectrum of options within, the standard Astartes armies and thinking to themselves, maybe I will take White Scars, maybe I will take Salamanders, but in all probability, I'm going to take Ultramarines. Is probably the way it's going to go most of the time. But, for people who do really love those particular chapters, they now have a greater degree of viability, which is really positive, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, why would you take those chapters other than for the one character or two characters that they have?
Well, you take it for the character and you take it for the buffs to the control or the OC of
particular units. But again, that's the thing that one character is giving you. Whereas you could say, if I ran my Salamanders, it doesn't matter what detachment I'm taking, I just run them as Ultramarines in terms of the characters, so I get to unlock those abilities. And maybe I convert a character to look like minus Calgar, for example. I think obviously, you get a bit into odd territory if you were trying to have a salamander-looking Gilliman, for example. But I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a captain with like two Fisty McFists and some honor guard with him to run as Marnus Calgar. But you play them up agree. In sort of Salamander's scheme. But obviously I think you fall in love with maybe the characters, because obviously the play style now is divorced from the chapters based on the new detachments and stuff, so there's less incentive for that.
I agree with you. I think when it comes to the when it comes to those chapters, you're absolutely right. Like, just convert your own Calgar, your own Tigerius, your own Gilliman. I mean, ultimately there's a perfectly viable Vulcan mini sold by Forge World. It's not humongous, but it's can be put on the right size base and will look perfectly ample. I think that's the thing. I think ultimately, at the moment, I think that's totally fair enough. But ultimately, I do think it's a really good set of changes. The only thing that's slightly annoying about it is just how many changes they're throwing at Marines, and it's quite evident that it's all in pursuit of, giving them a meaningful power buff because they are the poster children and they need to be looked after. But again, it's not like Custodes didn't get love. It's not like the Mechanicus didn't get some love. It's not like they're trying to, improve.
It doesn't feel like GSC. It's too much like favoritism. I mean, even in other editions. It's
total favoritism. Come on.
Well,
it is favoritism, mate. It 100% is.
Yes, okay, maybe that's not really what I meant to say, but it was more in terms of it's not like they haven't done this before. Then maybe it's
No, of course, there is a
because
trend.
you mentioned in the earlier segment about in 8th edition they didn't really ever buff stuff; it was more nerfs. But actually, I think wasn't Bolter Discipline an 8th edition mechanic that came along?
You are right. You are
and
right.
that was a buff.
Although I would say, oh no, well, that wasn't exactly what I was saying. I was saying that anyway, it doesn't matter what I said in the last one. People can listen to that for their own validation. But
my point about this was it does sort of harken back to the feelings of when they introduced Bolter Discipline. It was like, wow, this is a really meaningful, interesting change for Space Marines. And admittedly, that probably fundamentally changed how they worked more so than these. But because this is such a sort of sweeping range of updates for a lot of units, it does make you probably look twice at those units. So I think that's meaningful and that's good. So yeah, I mean that's quite impressive. I think in terms of a set of updates.
No, I mean I'm in favour of it. I think overall it's cool to see, and like you say, Phil, it's going to definitely make me want to. I mean, I've still been playing Space Marines quite consistently throughout the years, so it doesn't really massively change much for me in that sense. But it's cool to see more options for them, which is cool, really cool. All right, well there we go, Space Marines. Good for you. Well done. Overall, the big winner from this balanced Dataslate. Looking forward to seeing Space Marines all over the place again. Not that they weren't already pretty prevalent, but yeah, it's going to be cool. But that's that. Transitional noise.